Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Lawless podcast. And today, episode 2 of season 2, we are joined by Rico, who we've met on the University Air Squadron. He is one of the most experienced pilots we have, basically, and has a wealth of knowledge that we're going to hopefully tap into today. So, let's begin at the start. Where did your interest in aviation begin?
Hi Alex. Basically, my interest began because my father was in the Air Force, so I was brought up as a sort of Air Force brat. So throughout, I was always at an air base pretty much, living-wise, till I went to boarding school. And actually, spookily though, I didn't want to join the Air Force. I wanted to do something different to the old man, so I decided to go into business. So I went to university and did a degree in accountancy at Liverpool, which I know you'll all hate. But then I thought, you know what, I'll just do a little bit of flying on the UAS,
Just
see what it's like. And basically, I'll talk about the UAS in a bit, but loved it and decided that I'd then join the Air Force.
Excellent stuff. So, was there sort of a key moment you'd go, this is when my interest with aviation began, or would you say it's just that slow burning thing?
No, slow burner really throughout my youth. Like I say, in my teens, I thought, I don't want to do this, I'll do something else. But pretty much at uni then, so I joined in my first year. The UAS was completely different to what you dudes do nowadays.
Yeah.
So it was pretty much just about flying. It was all pretty much they wanted people to join the Air Force to fly. So there was no kind of AT. There was a skiing trip once a year. That was it.
Wow, that's the only sort of AT.
It was all about flying. And the other massive difference was there were no females on the squadron, which was bad, clearly. There was one lass, actually. She was a APO who was a sponsored doc. So she was going to join the Air Force as a doctor. But unless you had a cadetship, you couldn't get in the Air Force as a female then to fly. So that was a bit weird. But the UAS was all about flying. And so about at the end of my first year, I appreciated that I pretty much hated accountancy.
Well, through the degree, you were like,
this is
shit.
rubbish. And I was really enjoying the flying. So, and pretty much I was playing a lot of rugby then, like yourself, for Liverpool. And I basically went to uni on Mondays and Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Tuesdays was the town night. I would then get the bus back to Wood Vale, fly Wednesday to Friday, play rugby on Saturday, and then go back to Wood Vale Saturday night and fly on Sunday.
Excellent. So was there that abundance of flying available then? You could just sort of turn up and it'll be there, or?
Pretty much. So at the end of my 3 years at uni, I had nearly 200 hours on the Bulldog.
Wow.
Which was
great.
Yeah. So I flew my ass off. And then we used to have this thing called the Reed Trophy. I don't think you have it anymore.
No, I don't think so.
It was between us, Manchester, Northumbria and Yorkshire.
Yeah.
And all 4 units would compete in all about flying. It was spot landings and aerobatics.
Excellent.
And so literally in my last year when I was supposed to be doing my finals, back then, so mine were all on exams on the last year. There would be nothing throughout.
No second year.
It was all about all you had to do was pass years 1 and 2. In your last year, the degree was all on your finals.
Yeah.
And I might not have done quite enough work because I did the aerobatic competition, which literally I did 60 hours of nothing but aerobatics for the whole summer.
That's so cool.
Competition. Yeah, it was great. It was great fun. It's a bit of a shame we can't do it now, but it's just the risk averseness of the establishment to letting students come down to quite low levels. I think came down to 1,000 feet doing aerobatics over the field. But that was great. So I got a lot of hours, which was super. But literally at the end of my first year, I went for a cadetship, and they said, no, come back next year. So I went back at the end of my second year for a final year cadetship, which you then could get. And they said, come back in a year. So I then came back at the end of my third year. This was Biggin Hill then, not Cranwell.
Yeah, Biggin Hill.
And they finally said, yeah, go on then, you can do it.
Third time lucky and you can.
Third time lucky. Actually, I'd been for test in advance and I'd been for a flying scholarship. So I've been to Biggin Hill 5 times, which was slightly disturbing as when I joined the Air Force, they called me Big In 5, which was slightly embarrassing.
Yeah. So when you finished uni, then how was the sort of transition into the Air Force after that?
Pretty similar to what it is now. So I finished uni, had a couple of months off, went to the south of France, partied hard.
Excellent.
The good news was back then, this is 80s obviously, in fact 70s, early 80s, we didn't have massive uni debts, as in we didn't have to pay for it. So I managed to sort quite a substantial debt out there after the holiday in France. Then went to IOT, which was a bit shorter then. I think it was about 16 weeks. And then I started flying training straight away at Cranwell,
Excellent.
which then was on the Jet Provost.
And that was your first. So did they sort of recognise your hours on the UAS? Or how did that
Yeah,
work?
so it was slightly different then. If you had done your PFB, the flying badge,
Yeah.
then you got a shorter course on the Jet Provost, and you went then straight to what they called the JP5. There was a Jet Provost 3 at Church Fenton and Linton, and there was a Jet Provost 5 which is at Cranwell, and all the UAS with wings went to the JP5. It's basically slightly pokier, but only slightly. But the course was substantially shorter, so you got a few less hours, but still way more hours than they get on initial flying training nowadays.
Yeah.
So I think I got about 120 hours on
Wow.
on the JP, which I found after, as I say, a couple of hundred hours on the Bulldog. The JP course was pretty much the same, just a bit quicker.
Yeah,
So
just different aircraft,
it was just a bit of a breeze, to be honest. So I didn't really struggle too much, and then went to Valley.
Excellent. So what was the Jet Provost like to fly though? Like,
Yeah, it was nice, bit of a slug, but it's decent. It was a little jet. The JP3 they used to call variable noise constant thrust, because basically the noise changed a bit. The JP5 was slightly pokier, a nice little jet, but it had old-fashioned ejection seats, but it was still a jet. It was nice.
just a jet. Yeah.
Yeah, the mates of mine that went to Church Fenton or Linton, I think had a better time socially. Cranwell was still a bit, stuck in officer training and all that. And at the end of that course, I unfortunately had a few little run-ins with the law.
Oh no.
And ended up getting sent to Benbecula in the Outer Hebrides for
What?
a few months to sort of calm down before
Fair
Valley.
enough. Can we discuss what happened there? Or?
I don't think so. No,
Okay,
I think
good
we'll
stuff.
swerve that one. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll open that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened at Valley then? What was that?
So
next
Valley
phase
was
like?
more of a, suddenly you're starting to do stuff that you hadn't done before.
Yeah.
But once again, we still got through pretty much all of my UAS cohort, all passed flying training.
Excellent.
Couple went to helicopters, which is no bad thing. And then everyone went to Valley. One guy slipped out of Valley and went to Hercules in the end. But the rest of us all went fast jet. Valley I loved. I went through in the summer, which makes a big difference. It's it's not so great in the winter. But an interesting tale at Valley. Once again, I got into some slight trouble in that we were canoeing at a place called Rossniger. Have you heard of Rossniger?
No, yeah.
It's literally just round the corner from Valley. But there's a little back road that goes from Rossniger back to the mess at Valley.
Yeah.
We had a couple of cars down there with canoes on the roof, and one guy had maybe had a few too many ales. So he decided he would abandon his car there. So we all piled in the one car, and there wasn't quite enough room. So I thought it rather splendid to get in the canoe. So I'm in the canoe on the roof coming back from Rossniger to Valley, and unfortunately we went 180 out with a police car.
Oh no. So the coppers had just seen you sitting in the canoe.
So the feds basically did a UE. The guy driving thought I might have maybe had one too many beers, so he put his foot down.
Yeah, he was just like, let's go. Yeah.
So let's go. So from doing sort of 30 miles an hour down that road in a canoe, I'm now doing like 65, 70.
Sitting in the canoe still.
Sitting in a canoe. And anyway, to cut a long story short, the guy kind of lost it round a corner. The canoe came off the roof. I ended up in a field in a canoe. The police car came screaming around the corner and scratched his head. Luckily, breathalyzed the guy driving. He was under, so that was all fine. But he sort of scratched his head and looked at me and went, right, you're in a canoe. Cut a long story short, he basically nicked me for not wearing a seatbelt.
In a canoe?
In a canoe. I did point out there was no seatbelt fitted, but he was having none of it. But the bad news was it went straight to the... because they knew we were all in the Air Force.
Yeah.
So it went straight to the guys at Valley. So we all ended up in front of the flight commander, who actually had to... He was great, because there's a bloke called Charlie McElroy, who's an old Lightning pilot, super bloke. But he could not keep a straight face as he read this police report. Yeah. So that was great. But anyway, Valley was good. nice. Then I went, so from Valley, in those days, you did Valley and then tactical weapons at either Chivener or Broady.
Yeah.
And I had, this is the first time I'd encountered the hold, which...
The good old hold, yeah.
The good old hold, apart from my little couple of months at Benbecula. But so nowadays, you guys are holding for hours, years and years. Then I had about 3 months before Chivener. And one of my sort of nicest times, actually. So at the time I was, can you say courting these days? Chasing.
That's all good. That's all good on the podcast.
So I was chasing my now beloved wife. And she lived near Bedford.
Yeah.
So I managed to blag myself. In those days, there was no sort of holding. There's no organisation.
You just do what you wanted.
You pretty much organised something. So
nice.
I rang up this guy at Bedford, where there was this place called the Radar Research Squadron.
Nice.
And it was basically a bunch of test pilots that would test stuff, mostly to do with radars. But they had, critically, a Hawk. I just got my wings so I could fly that.
Nice.
They had a Hunter. More about that later. They had a Canberra, a couple of Wessex. They had a Viscount, which is a great big old 4-engine monstrous thing that actually had the Fox Hunter radar in it with a bunch of boffins that were... and so basically at Bedford, all I did was fly all these different aeroplanes. The only one I could fly on my own was the Hawk, obviously, the rest with someone else. But one of my greatest times was in the Viscount, charging round Wales at low level with this crusty old test pilot with these boffins in the back doing stuff, doing radar trials. It was and I'm flying this monstrous airliner type thing, but with piston engines. It's fantastic. No, great time. So that was Bedford, and then down to Chivener, which was then TAC weapons. And once again, this is I'd sort of pretty much breezed through up to now. TAC weapons became quite hard.
Yeah.
Then we had the Hawk. Nowadays, Hawk, nice and modern, especially the T2 glass cockpit. Back then they had this thing called the non-AHARS jets, which was the attitude, heading and reference system.
Yeah.
And basically it meant that the instruments, if you pulled G, they all spun around.
Yeah,
they just went whiz, 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 because they weren't gyro-stabilised and blah, blah, blah. They were gyro-stabilised. They didn't have this AHARS system. So you'd get bounced and suddenly you had no idea where you were, not even the compass worked.
It all just,
And you had to lead a pair into a range, doing a time on target attack and stuff. And I found that pretty tricky, to be fair. So go on.
So what do you think sort of helped you get through flying training when it got difficult? What advice would you give to people?
You just got to grit your teeth, and you just got to when it got tough, you just got to work hard. You just got to plough the hours in, and there's a little bit of I don't know, personality, determination, whatever it is, but you just can't give up. Some people at this stage, there's a few guys got thinned out now that you could pretty much see them just slump, and they would just kind of, do you know what, I can't do this, I'm just going to go herbs.
Just give
or
up,
something.
basically,
And so I just gritted my teeth, and it was a little phase of halfway through the course, gritted my teeth a bit, and then came out and won all the bombing prizes at the end, so, did all right in the end. However, now here's the deal, back then, there was nowadays you basically get posted at the end of fast jet training, you can go to Typhoon or F-35.
Yeah.
Back then, there was a whole bunch of options. There was Harriers, Jaguars, Tornado, Lightning even. Wow. And I fancied... Well, I wanted to go single seat, so I wanted to go, first of all, to the Lightning, then the Harrier, Jaguar, then Tornado, because I'd done quite well at the weaponeering.
Yeah.
I thought, I'm going to be a mud mover bomber pilot. And at the postings day, what they do is they give you this... it was a beer pot, basically, with beer in it.
Yeah.
And you had to down the pint, and then there'd be a jet at the bottom.
We're just sitting in the bottom of that.
Sitting in the bottom. So you pop your beer, and if you got it right, they would go, whoa, you go into the... But if you yammed a beer and it was a Lightning, they went, nope. Then you had to pick another one, do another one, and it'd say Harrier, nope. Pick another one, you go, right, Jaguar, this is the one for me. Yeah, nope. And eventually, at the end, after I'd done about 5 of these things... I thought the only one left is the Phantom.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go Phantom F4. There'd been a whole bunch of people got chopped on the OCU in the previous months in fact half a year before I went there. So I literally got this beer. Obviously, I'm fairly wibble now, but I necked this thing. Sure enough, Phantom. Everyone went, "Whoa, you're going to the Phantom!" And I was so disappointed. Literally, I went, "Oh no!" But as it turns out, best thing ever.
Excellent. So, and how did it progress there? So you've done your chop, and then like, right, now you're off here. Where did you go next?
So next is the Phantom OCU, the conversion unit, which then was at Coningsby.
Yeah.
So did that, and it's weird, Alex, going from a nice little jet like the Hawk, which is a bit of a sort of sports car, dinky toy, you know, super responsive, does exactly what you want, and it's quite small and it's snug. You get into this massive American brute fighter, you know, the Phantom, and it's just a weird jet. A, it was massive. B, you had someone in the boot helping you out, doing the radar. And it did strange things, the Phantom. Didn't fly like a normal aeroplane. For instance, if you rolled it with the aileron like you would normally do, it would go the other way if it was loaded up. So
really?
The only way you could roll it was with the rudders. So you used to say basically if it buffets, use your boots. So as you loaded it up, you had to roll with rudder, which is kind of strange. Took a bit of a while getting used to. And all I'd say is that the Phantom was very difficult to fly well. Lots of people did it okay, but to do it really well was trick. But I loved it. Great jet. And the air defense world of Fighter Town, you know, there was a lot of squadrons.
Yeah.
All sort of competing with each other. Lots of people on each one, and it was Party Town.
Party Town, Fighter Town.
Party Town, Fighter Town. And we did in those days, we went all over the place. We went to the Middle East, America, Red Flag, a lot of QRA, you know, sitting alert, but a lot of good detachments to Europe. But you know, we basically, and wherever we went, we tended to party.
Excellent. What's some sort of standout places for you?
Standout places were Red Flag, so Vegas, living downtown Vegas in a casino.
Living in a casino.
Living in a casino for 2 weeks, and then, as you can imagine, one of my favoured memories of Vegas was we drove to LA for the weekend. I mean, it's just mad now, but you know, it's just great times. Did a little time in Canada, Goose Bay.
Yeah. Nice.
Lots of Middle East, but the greatest times were probably every year. We had to go to Akrotiri in Cyprus to do gunnery. And that would be 4 weeks of pretty much getting up early, shooting at a banner, getting it scored, seeing whether you'd passed or not. And then once you'd passed what they call this ACE qualification, Allied Command Europe, I think it was, you had to get a couple of scores on the banner. Yeah. Once you'd tick that, you were then on the beach for the rest of the day. So, and, you know, we used to go there every year, 5 or 6 weeks. We'd then go to a place called Decimomanu in Sardinia to do combat once a year. And every squadron would roll through there constantly. So we were away a lot. I'd say we were young and single and always, in fact, no, I wasn't. I was married. But no, it's a great time. Yeah.
So like with sort of the gunnery, is that sort of like iron sight stuff, or is there sort of technology involved in that as well? Or?
In the what, sorry?
With the gunnery, how is that? What's the process of doing that? How does that
So
work?
basically, you would have in those days, it was a Canberra towing a banner.
Just flying along with it?
Yeah, flying along with a big bit of string behind it, fairly long bit of string, as you can imagine, and a banner on it, a big banner, so it's a big white thing with a bullseye on it. And you would go up against this thing. He would do fairly academic, just sort of orbits. And you had to get 15% of your rounds through that banner in order to qualify.
Yeah.
Twice in 6 shoots. But here's the deal. The F4 used to fire 6,000 rounds a minute. Wow. So 60 rounds a second.
Yeah.
So, and they used to call it was like, swinging a cat round. Basically, these rounds would go everywhere. So to get them super accurate, like today, Typhoon or something, you put the dot on the target, and that's where it's going. The gun sight in the Phantom was what they called a lead computing sight. So it's a bit of a dark art. you have to get it all nice and stable, and that then it would be vaguely pointing where the bullets were going, but where the bullets were going now, not in a couple of seconds' time when they hit the target.
Yeah.
So you had to do a bit of computing, blah, eyeballing stuff. But critically, because it was spinning so fast, this gun, the rounds are going everywhere. So to get 15% was quite tricky.
100%.
Although, yeah, obviously.
It's done. We
Can
get
be
there.
done.
We get there.
We get there in the end. Yeah, no, so good. But like I say, the best thing was being Cyprus would then open super early, so we'd start flying at 7 or 8 in the morning, finish by 1, then you're on the beach,
Bosh.
windsurfing and water skiing, and having the odd brandy sour.
And you're being paid for this.
And you're getting paid, and yes, exactly. And more critically now, we're still in our 20s.
Yeah.
I just feel for the guys now because they've all the holds and stuff. They hit the squadron, they're in their 30s.
Yeah, yeah.
And, they got wives and kids, and
even if you join early, like there's still the sort of long process.
Yeah, it's tricky. So no, it's good. So that's the Phantom. But the Phantom, great jet, nice. It's probably, when I look back, is it my favourite? Probably not quite, but certainly it was
Good jet.
Good jet. But I did quite a lot of time on it and a lot of squadrons, because I went from Coningsby to Wadisham to Lucas to Wildenrath back to Wadisham. So a lot of tours.
Yeah.
It's a long time, basically.
How long did you actually spend on the F4? Is it like
10 years, basically.
take a while? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's good. Sort of like the first
Yeah.
big chunk of your career
Yeah,
was.
yeah,
something
it was
like
all the F4, yeah. And at the end of it, I did the weapons instructor course, the QI course, which is 6 months away from home, and that's probably the hardest I've ever worked. And you also you're the best you're ever going to be at the end of that.
Yeah.
Because after that, it's all downhill. I mean, you do get, but it's such an intense course, both academically and flying wise, that you're probably the best you're ever going to be at the end of it.
100%.
Good fun, though.
So then from there, did you go on to? Was that onto training people in the F4? Was that?
So then, no, I always stayed on the fighter squadrons, but I was like the weapons instructor. So
Yeah.
whenever we went and did this gunnery or missile firings or any sort of tactical employment, the weapons instructor basically leads the squadron through that little phase. So it's a good thing to do, and you become, well, I guess not respected because you earn that, but you are part of the management of the squadron on all things tactics and weapons. So it's a nice place to be, as opposed to the flying instructor bit, as opposed to teaching people to fly. You're teaching people to operate the jet.
Yeah.
And also, when you go on these bigger exercises like Red Flag, you tend to be the guy, the team, as in there's 2 of you, leading the bigger missions. So, if you had in Red Flag, quite often we'd be 20 or 30 versus 60 or 70, so,
Wow.
and you would have to manage that package.
Just like a massive dogfight, basically, or a massive. Like,
Yeah, but
air assault.
and it's all instrumented, so everyone's
Yeah,
got
yeah.
a pod on that, so you can see where everyone is. But there'd be waves of jets coming through a target area, and there'd be a whole bunch of people, normally us, defending that target area. So it wouldn't be 60 all at once. You'd be
Yeah,
leading
yeah,
a little
just like
package
a
of
little bit,
people.
then a little
Yeah,
bit.
but you would have to organise that whole package, and then some, they're obviously the AWACS or whatever would manage the overall fight, but you would have to organise how you're going to defend or whatever you're doing on that day. So, and that's what the weapons instructor does, basically.
Nice. How did we fare at Red Flag? Did you have any good victories or?
The Phantom didn't do so good. It was getting too old because we're up
Yeah.
against, F-15, 16, 18, tricky. And so, and we had old missiles then. We did all right for the age of the aeroplane, but we were basically just getting a bit long in the tooth.
Yeah,
We made up for it in the bar.
indeed. That's where the true victory is done.
Exactly.
Oh, so after the F4, was it onto the F18 then?
Yeah, and that was the other good news about being a QY back then, was the most not most QYs got exchanges, but the exchange tours generally went to QYs.
Yeah, so if someone was going to get it, it'd be...
Yeah. And that's was one of the reasons of the QI course, actually. And I'd sort of sniffed around at a few and didn't quite make it because they were all boarded. There'd be a few people from different jets on it. And eventually I got the F-18 in Australia,
Excellent.
which is quite a decent gig.
That's a good gig. Yeah.
A good gig. So the place was a place called Williamtown, which is just north of Sydney, on the beach, flying an F-18.
Can't beat that. Yeah.
Can't beat it. Here's the deal, though. So the squadron. So I went from a massive Air Force, well, not that massive actually, but a fairly big Phantom squadron, which would have like 20 crews. So there'd be 20 pilots and 20 navigators. So if you went somewhere, let's say we went to Akrotiri, there'd be 40 aircrew. There'd be a bunch of engineers and
Support
holding people and suppliers and all that. So, there'd be like 50 dudes. So you'd go somewhere and you'd go, right, who's going down, who wants to come water skiing, who wants to come partying, whatever it happens to be. And there'd always be 20 dudes getting a minibus and off we go.
Excellent.
Get to Australia, the Hornet squadron had 12 pilots, of which, a few of the execs and wheels, and there's a couple of boring guys, not actually the Aussies were pretty party on, and there'd be a couple of guys that were flying first thing in the morning. So suddenly you'd go, right, who's coming out tonight? There'd be 3 of you. So that was
reduced.
different.
Yeah.
Different, yeah. But so the boys used to, 4 or 5 of us would meet on the beach in the morning. Excellent. Before the wind got up, where the surf was good, so we'd all catch a few waves for about an hour.
Nice.
Then there was a nice little shack that basically did coffee and bacon sarnies. So we'd have a little surf for an hour, whilst I say when the waves were particularly clean. We'd have a bacon sarnie, cup of coffee, then there's a little back gate into the airfield. We'd then drive to the squadron, have a quick shower, put flying suits on, brief the weather. It was always
on that brief, yeah.
Blue, mate, scorchio. Brief a mish. We'd go do whatever we're going to do. Come back, and on the way back in, we used to fly down all the beaches, check out where the surf was good, because depending on the waves and the wind and the surf would be particularly good. So we'd then do the debrief, look at the tapes, go, surf looked good at Nobbies. We'd then go down to Nobbies or whatever particular beach.
So you'd use the jet to find out where the best surfing was.
Where the best surf was on the way back in, and then we'd be back in the surf, quick hour, beer, home. That's
a day.
That was pretty much it every day. And so there's 12 pilots on the squadron. On a Phantom squadron, we'd have, say, 15, 20 jets, probably not that many. On the F-18 squadron, there were the same number of airplanes. So we used to have 15, 18 jets on the squadron. On a Phantom squadron, by the end of the flying day, half of them would be broken. There'd be US radars, bits and pieces, hide leaks, whatever it happened to be. Hornet squadron, in 3 years, I snagged the radar once. So 12 jets, 12 pilots, 18 jets. There were always, if we're flying a 6 ship, there'd be 8 available. We never didn't fly the ones that we were programmed to fly. It's like, and that was unheard of for me.
Yeah.
And we fly once a day, every day, pretty much. The Aussies, small air force, but really capable. And once again, they didn't mind the odd detachment, so we used to go up to a place called Tyndall, which is in the Gaffer, the Great Australian F-all, which is literally in the middle of nowhere. But they had a weapons range the size of Wales.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
where you could just chuck bombs around, strafe it. There were marked out airfields, old aeroplanes. You could basically do it. You could go supersonic wherever you wanted. The only rule was you weren't allowed with supersonic within 5 miles of the base when you got home. So it was absolutely unrestricted. So we used to go there once a year to do some weaponry. We'd go to Malaysia every year for 6 weeks, a place called Butterworth, which is where the Aussies had a base back in the old days, and they used to go back there. Indonesia, a place called Townsville, which is on the Great Barrier Reef, where we would fly all week and then hire yachts and go out on the Barrier Reef at the weekend. So, a decent gig.
Indeed, a very decent gig.
Yeah.
It seems like you've gone from decent gig to decent gig, to be fair.
Yeah, that was nice. I was quite tempted to stay in Oz, I have to say.
Really?
Yeah. Sort of. Anyway, I thought The snag was that back then, Alex, was so this is pre-mobile phones.
Yeah.
So it's a long way from home. Both my daughters were born there. Well, sorry, one daughter was born there. One we took there at about 6 months old. So it's quite a long way from home as far as, parents and all that stuff. So, at the end of it, had a great time. Came home to the tornado.
The NATO.
Not quite in the F-18's league.
No, not in the same league. Bit of a downgrade a little bit.
Yeah, but hey, still good fun. But
Exactly.
So I went to Lucas then, got promoted while I was in Australia. I went to Lucas as a flight commander. Tornado, nice jet. But to be fair, this is the F3, the fighter one, as opposed to the bomber one. At the end, it did what it said on the tin. Went super quick. Had a decent radar at the end. The data link was good. And unlike the early days where they struggled a bit avionic wise, at the end it was good. Did what it did. It didn't turn very well, wasn't very good at combat, but it went pretty quick. So it was, once again, the fighter guys are fighter guys, and we all had a good time. But I only did one tour there, and then I left the Air Force.
So what was the tour with the tornado there? Where did you go?
So again?
Where was that tour?
Oh, at Lucas. So
Lucas,
Scotland, yeah. All these bases now, Lucas, Wildenrath, Watersham.
Yeah, they're all gone.
They're all gone. There's only Coningsby left.
It's the one last
Just
bastion
one.
of the Air Force doing its thing.
Yeah, I feel for you guys now, because you can get posted to Coningsby or Marham.
Yeah, they're your options.
There's the options.
Or Lossy if you're unlucky, I guess.
Yeah, Lossy, good point. Yeah, I forgot Lossy, yeah. Good job I didn't get questioned in the interview process.
Yeah, exactly. So with the jets, did you actually fight any of them in sort of a combat situation? Or?
So, not really. So the tornado, I did a whole bunch of no-fly zone stuff in Iraq.
Yeah.
And there was the odd surface-to-air missile would go whizzing past you. But
you'd actually see it just go...
Yeah, but it was not really a threat, because they used to fire them, and you would only ever see them at night, because you're on goggles, so you're on MVGs.
Yeah.
So you get a sort of bright-up thing, but, it would be 50 miles away. It looks kind of close on goggles, but it's not. And the Iraqis, to be honest, were firing them unguided then, so...
Or just like...
They just they just poop them in the air.
It's like fireworks.
So, no. So, and we would be, occasionally they would launch a few jets and they would try and sucker you into what they called SAM traps.
How does that work?
So, what they'd do is they'd launch a load of Iraqi fighters, either Mirages or whatever they had, and they would see us come off cap and start chasing after them, and then they would what we call drag. So they would basically turn tail and run into what they called the super mez over Baghdad.
Yeah.
So they would then basically try and drag you into the mez so that surface-to-air missiles could get you. But
just try and lure you in, basically.
Try and lure you in, but
obviously you knew that, and sort of
it happens so often that, and they'd always run away too soon, so you never even got within anywhere close to a weapons solution. So
would they ever engage you when they launched the jets or not?
No.
No,
they would never come anywhere near us because they knew they'd get toasted. So this was the no. This wasn't during the war. This was the no-fly zone later on, where we were just keeping the
policing basically.
Policing, but we were basically keeping the areas over the Kurds clear of Iraqi jets, and they used to toy with us, and every now and again there'd be an event, but to be fair, for the mud movers, the guys dropping the bombs, they were busy all the time. They were down there doing stuff. But for the fighters, there was never anything to shoot at. So
because that air supremacy was there, so there wasn't that need really.
Exactly. Yeah, there was nothing.
Excellent.
It was interesting domestically though, because when we first went there, we were in tents in a place called Al-Kaj.
Yeah.
Tents in the desert.
It's not a good mix.
Not great.
No.
Especially the British tents. So the British tents we're on an airfield with the French, the Americans, and the Brits.
Yeah.
The Brits were in these kind of World War II bell tents with a vague attempt at strapping a air conditioner on the side. The Americans were in these super whipping. They had a Baskin Robbins and a Burger King and all that stuff. And the Brits had a Chow Hall, which was and a tent latrine, which
Oh no,
was not good.
no. Going from yeah.
So it was a bench, which you would sit next to folk in the morning. And,
Well, other people be there as well. Like.
yeah, you'd all be sitting there having a poo in the morning on a bench with a long drop underneath. Not great.
Yeah, like a Roman bathhouse sort
Exactly.
of
Yeah.
vibe.
You
Yeah.
have to sort of converse whilst trying to have a poo. Not the greatest.
Exactly. Yeah. How's your morning, mate? Oh, not too bad.
Not too bad. Yeah.
Oh.
Sleep all right? Great. And it was also dry, which is quite good for your health, as in no booze. So
Right.
that was always good for me. So I go to there was a big gym tent.
The gym
So
tent.
Gym
Nice.
tent. So I thought, you know what, if I'm not boozing for a month, I might as well get fit. Yeah,
Excellent.
so I always come back in a stone lighter, which would last about a week.
Oh, good stuff. So yeah, so when
No action basically. So all my time was Cold War-y and Gulf War One. Actually, Gulf War One, we deployed. So the day that the war kicked off, we all got called in as we would do for a alert for, a pretend.
Yeah,
we used to
as
call
in-
tactical evaluation of the station. So we all came in. Hadn't really heard the news because it wasn't like today where everything's on your phone. So
Yeah.
got in, and we were supposed to have a week's kit with us when we got called in at 2 a.m. So we all came
Yeah.
in. The guy on the desk said, "Everyone got a week's kit?" Yeah. No. He said, "No. Have you really got a week's kit?" No.
Probably not. Yeah.
He said, "Go home, get a week's kit, and pack swimming trunks." Interesting. So we all went home, came back. The jets were all armed up, and we launched that next day and went to Cyprus, but
Wow.
never any further. But it's still, it's exciting at the time. We all pack pistols and arm the jets, and off we went. And what's not particularly appreciated, I think, is how it is for the families and spouses, because those
Yeah.
husbands basically get called into work at 2 a.m. They then disappear. We were away for 3 months.
What, you just got goodbye?
Yeah,
Like,
ciao.
see you in 3 months.
Yeah, well, we didn't. We know. Well, we were just off.
Yeah.
Or we thought we were going to war, but we didn't because they
Yeah.
decided the Phantom wouldn't go. So but we blasted off, and that thing for the girls and families is actually a tough gig,
100%.
as we found out when we got back.
They're like, where have you been? Yeah.
We've been in Akateria having a great time. Oh yeah,
Well, missed you. Come back, please.
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
did you do? What did you do QRA with? Was that with the F4 as well? Was that
F4, F and F3. Yeah.
Did you actually come up against anything when you?
Yeah, we did lots of stuff with bears and badgers, and I never really saw. There were right at the end of my time on the F3 at Leeming, actually.
Nice.
A bunch of guys scrambled against a. You ever heard of a blackjack?
Yeah.
It looks like it's a big sort of swept wing, massive Russian bomber, and they had a great waves and waves of blackjacks coming over for days.
Just
So
like constantly testing.
yeah,
the response,
and the boys launched and got loads of them, but unfortunately I missed them. So just bears and badgers for me, a bit boring.
So they just sort of come up to a sort of area of interest, and you just sort of.
Yeah, they'd mostly come over the North Sea. They'd always be in international airspace, so they'd perfectly
do what they want. Yeah,
do what
I guess,
they want. But they would, we'd launch, and there'd normally be a tanker come with us. So quite often we'd go up. This is early days of Phantoms. They'd know they were coming round because the Norwegians would pick them up across the top of Norway,
Yeah.
and then they'd get handed off to us, and we would sit there off the top of Scotland with a tanker,
Just waiting.
and
for
then
them.
waiting for them, and then they'd come in, and we'd go and wave, and they'd put Playboys up against the window and all that sort of stuff.
That's brilliant. Well, you're both just like going along. You're like
Just going on drone, yeah.
Nice.
And they're all, they're just aviators like us, so
doing their job.
doing
Yeah.
their job, and they'd then turn around and shoo off.
Nice.
Just
Good out
test
from
it,
you.
yeah. Or they just carry on, to be honest, go around the top and keep on going, but
Or just
nothing
sort
we
of
could do about
go
it.
around. Sort of.
Yeah, go around the top of Ireland and blah. So
Fair. Yeah.
yeah.
Excellent. So, like, was there any particular ones that stood out for you during your QRA? Any sort of particular ones you're like, it's now basically, or not really?
Not really, no. The no, not really. Because like I say, I didn't really get it. The blackjacks. There's one time where we were at Watersham actually, and the weather wasn't very good, and we used to have this. We used to call it restricted or mandatory, basically, so they wouldn't launch you for practice
Yeah.
if it was restricted. In mandatory, they'd only launch you if there was something really bad going
If it
on.
had to be,
because
yeah.
it meant that sort of peacetime standards of weather weren't
Weren't there anymore.
weren't
Yeah.
available. So the whole of the UK was red in fog, except for, I think, the top of Scotland. Anyway, so we launched in mandatory, so here's the deal it's slightly different nowadays. In Germany, we were on 5 minutes.
To get up, yeah.
So from asleep in your scratcher to roaring down the runway was 5 minutes.
Wow.
Which is quite tight.
Yeah.
Especially, because you got to get to the jet. The jet was literally 20 yards away. But you had to get to the jet, get in, strap in,
do your checks,
fire it up,
yep.
do some checks. We used to pre-arm the jet, so we'd get in it, do all the checks apart from starting it, and then leave all the straps ready to rock. And literally, we would. It's slightly mad in Germany in that we would be strapping in, taxiing.
Like as you're going, you're like.
Yeah, clicking it, and
wow.
So you could fire both engines at the same time, finish strapping in as you taxied out and blast off. But if you didn't get airborne, if the hooter went in the middle of the night, it was normally for this tachyval. If the QRA wasn't airborne in 5 minutes, the whole station failed the exercise. So whatever happened in the next 4 days, the station would have to do the exercise again.
Yeah.
So 5 minutes was you had to do it. In the UK, it was 10, so slightly
bit
less,
more wiggle room,
but still tight.
But
anyway, so we're at Wadisham, and we normally have 2 jets on queue, and then what we call a Q3, which is ready to go, and there'll be a Q3 crew who would be at home.
Yeah.
So we launched. I say we're mandated, so the whole of the UK is red.
So
in fog.
No flying, basically.
So we're not going to launch today. Bing hooter goes, we blast off. They then bring in Q3, who also launches. Anyway, we were going to go to land at Lossy, where the weather was, the only place was vaguely decent. It then fogged out, so we all ended up in Iceland.
What?
Wow, mad, isn't it?
Sort of pulled out to Iceland. Like.
So Iceland was decent. So a tanker got launched. I think we got some bears or something, and then ended up in Iceland in Keflavik.
Just because there was no way to land back in.
Yeah, the whole of the UK was out.
Wow.
So
and someone just made the call and was like, right, lads, off you go to Iceland.
Yeah, it's nice. But once again, for the girls, so we're all on queue, and then about 3 days later, we show up back from Iceland when the fog's cleared.
Yeah. Back again, hello.
Hello.
Where have you been 3 days?
Yeah, like I say, pre-mobile phones, no one's speaking. We obviously did get a phone out of Keflavik, but
yeah,
Americans looked after us. Once again, a few beers.
Good stuff. Has to be done. Excellent. So, like after the tornado, then it was into Civvy Street for you.
Yeah. So it was still good. I then joined an outfit called Flight Refueling Aviation, which do electronic warfare training for the military.
Nice.
But it's a civilian company doing basically electronic jamming. So we'd jam radar sites, aeroplanes, we'd jam communications, all for training. So we would pretend to be a Russian jammer or a Chinese jammer or whatever the system wanted. And we had a whole bunch of different pods in different frequencies to jam different things. And they still do it, actually. They're still flying out of Teesside and Bournemouth.
Nice.
A nice outfit. Mostly all the guys are ex-mil.
Yeah.
And girls. However, less so now. There's a few people straight in from Civvy Street. But nice outfit in that it's sort of civvy flying in a biz jet in a military job.
Yeah.
And so once again, we do what the military do. So this is detachment fantastic in that I went to Alaska, Canada, Malaysia, loads of Middle East, Oman, Saudi, and then when the wall came down and the Eastern Europe came out, we did loads of stuff in Lithuania, Bulgaria, loads and loads of Northern Europe, so Norway, Sweden. Great times because you basically go away with a couple of jets and 6 of you.
Nice. Just
for a fortnight and do whatever you need to do in electronic warfare. So no, great outfit. For the first 10 years of that though, I kept flying the Tornado
simultaneously
part-time out of Leeming.
Could you do that as well?
Yeah, it was called so I basically joined the Auxiliary Air Force.
Yeah.
And I stayed current on the Tornado at Leaving on 25 Squadron. And in fact, it's about my proudest stat in that I managed to get 1,000 hours Tornado part-time, which was...
Just as a part-timer, yeah.
Just as a part-timer, which...
Oh, it's a good bit of part-time.
Yeah, the guys struggle to get 1,000 hours full-time these days.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was quite nice. Yeah, no, good gig. Another good gig. Good gigs there are. Message of the night. No, so that was good. So for the first 10 years... And then, because we're sort of running out of time, I might as well finish off if that's right.
Yeah.
So at the end of that, I was also their CAA examiner, and which meant being in the simulator in Paris quite a lot.
Nice.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good gig, but actually it's not a great gig because the simulator in Paris is actually at Le Bourget. Which is quite a long way from
like Paris. Yeah.
So you're basically spending your time in a tin box at an airfield miles away from town. I was doing a lot of that. Anyway, we sort of parted company. I left there. When the Tornado part-time gig finished, then I joined the Air Squadron, the AEF at Leaving, flying the tutor, which is great. And then the tutor... the AEF boss, nice chap, Russ Brownwich, retired, and there was a job going. And I thought, staying at Leeming, a little bit of tutor action, that sounds good. So I took that on, which also involved becoming a qualified flying instructor.
Yep.
So I'm a QI and a QFI. We won't say which is best. So I did that for 5 years, and whilst that was happening, I managed to get Flying the Hunter, which I'm still doing. And so to finish off, basically Hawk Hunter Aviation, flying initially out of Scampton, but now spookily based at Leeming, which is kind of nice. So we do anyone that... So it's an interesting outfit because once again it's civilian, but military registered. Yeah. Because it's a fairly complex fast jet. Not particularly complex with today's fast jets, but so it has to be military registered, which means we have the same audit and processes as any RAF squadron, fast jet squadron. Yeah. So same rules, exactly the same, which makes it quite expensive to operate. So we do mostly trials work. So, for instance, if there happened to be a UK defence manufacturer of some sort of missile wanted to test it, or not test it, but put that missile on a jet to see how it worked. Yeah. Much easier to put it on an old Hunter than it is on a brand new Typhoon to integrate it, or F-35. So we do a lot of that stuff. We do a lot of work for the Navy, a bit of work for the Luftwaffe at the moment. Basically, anyone who needs a fast jet, we're there. And so that's great, and I'm their instructor and examiner again, so that's nice. The Hunter, bearing in mind it was built late 50s, early 60s, lovely jet to fly. Nice. Really nice, handles nicely, and the other nice thing is it's one of the few these days modern airplanes all fly by wire. It's still hydraulic flying controls.
Really?
But you can also still fly it in manual. So if you lose all hydraulics, you can actually... You need two hands.
But you can do it.
And you'd have no chance because you're a brute. But basically you need two hands to fly it. But and it's just for landing. It just means you can get it back on the ground
if you had to,
if you've lost everything. Unfortunately, if you lose your engine, you also lose the hydraulics. Yeah. So if you're doing a PFL... an FL, I should say, as in it's always going to be in manual, so you need to practice it. So we basically do it every 3 months. We have to do a manual landing.
Let's just sort of get that currency.
Get that currency, So that's good. Good gig. And then I'm really enjoying, obviously, instructing on the UAS.
Excellent stuff.
Which
is how obviously we met in this thing today.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So my final question would be, actually two questions. What would be sort of, if you could go back, would you, and why, and would you change anything? And the second one would be, what advice would you give to someone either interested in the UAS or looking to join the Air Force now? So, starting with the second one, if you're interested in the UAS, there is
absolutely no doubt do it.
Just get it done, yeah.
Just join. If you're at university and you've got any interest whatsoever in joining the Air Force or in flying or in just having a good time, you join the UAS. You get to fly if you want. You get to do cycling, canoeing, mountain biking, skiing, sailing, whatever you want, basically. And every day you show up, you get paid for it.
Exactly.
It's a no-brainer.
Exactly. Why would you not do that?
Why would you not do that?
Exactly.
So, and just there's loads and loads of information on the internet about what to research if you want to join, as far as getting through the interview process. So just do some Googling, find out, because people unfortunately turn up for the interview and it's quite obvious they haven't prepared whatsoever.
Yeah.
If you just Google UAS interviews and you'll find out.
It's all on there, yeah.
It's there. So just pitch up prepared. And the other question was, would I do it again? So I often think about this. So when I left university, I and all my mates had done accountancy.
Yeah.
I joined the Air Force. They mostly went into industry. I kept in touch with a few, and they're all incredibly rich. They've done very, very well. Have they had as much fun?
No.
No.
Yeah.
Am I particularly poor? No. I'm not rich, but I've had a great time. So, of course, I'll do it again. Loved it. It's been a great career.
Excellent stuff. Just, it's insane just to think that was your job to just do that, Amazing time. And all I'd say is thank you so much for being here. There's part 2 on the cards. That's what I'm saying. So that'll be good. And, just thank you so much and good luck with everything, really.
Alex, it's been a pleasure. We'll fly together soon, no doubt.
Indeed. This has been the Lawless Podcast, episode 2 of season 2. We'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Goodbye.